My name is Kyle Benson. I'm 35, and 3 weeks before my wedding. I came home early, excited to surprise the woman I loved, and found her on our brand new couch with my brother. Her head was in his lap. His hand was in her hair. They weren't watching TV. And in that moment, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, stunned. My briefcase hit the floor with a sharp crack that made them both jolt like teenagers caught skipping curfew. She scrambled to sit up, her face flushed, her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And Danny, my brother, he just smirked. "Should have knocked, bro," he said, like I was the one who had walked in on his house, like I was interrupting his moment. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not broke, not snapped, shifted. The kind of shift that happens when a man finally accepts he's been holding on to a life that never really existed. Now, if you're still with me, hit that like button, leave a comment with where you're watching from, and tell me, have you ever been betrayed by someone who knew better? Because that betrayal, it didn't happen in a vacuum. No, this wasn't just a cheating scandal. It was a slow erosion of trust, disguised as family. It started long before the couch, before the ring, before Lisa. It started with Danny. It always started with Danny. See, my brother's been living in our parents' basement for nearly a decade now, 33 years old, still clinging to the faded glory of his high school Letterman jacket, and the mythical heartbreak named Scarlett. Scarlett, the college girl who shattered his soul at some dorm party 10 years ago. She became his built-in excuse, his escape hatch, his personal sob story. Can't keep a job. He's still healing from Scarlett. Can't move out of mom and dad's house, too traumatized. But the real kicker, my parents ate it up. They worshipped his pain like it was a masterpiece. Meanwhile, I was labeled the responsible one, which, in our family, meant emotionally disposable. The designated driver for someone else's disaster. I worked my ass off in tech. I spent years climbing the startup ladder, saving every cent to buy our first home. When I proposed to Lisa with the ring hidden in a tiramisu at her favorite Italian spot, she cried. I thought it was joy. Looking back, maybe it was guilt. We were planning the wedding, debating colors for the guest tables, arguing about whether we should have a live band or a DJ. Real problems, happy problems. And then came the engagement party. My parents insisted we have it in their backyard. I should have known better. But Lisa was glowing with excitement, and I wanted to make her happy. We rented string lights, set up folding chairs under a white canopy. The Pinterest vibes were strong. It was the kind of party where everything looks beautiful in photos, but if you zoom in too close, you see the cracks. And Danny. He grabbed the mic like he was accepting an Emmy. "To my little brother Kyle," he said, raising a champagne flute like a weapon, the quiet one, the planner. While I was out living life, taking risks, he was sketching blueprints, building futures. And look where it got him: perfect house, perfect job, perfect girl. Some people are just lucky. The guests clapped. But I heard what he meant. He wasn't toasting me. He was taking shots. That night, my friend Martin pulled me aside by the drinks table. "That wasn't a toast," he said. "That was a fucking warning. Don't let that guy anywhere near your happiness." I laughed it off. Martin's always been the cynical one. He's seen too much corporate backstabbing to believe in sentimentality. But when I looked at Lisa later that night, her cheeks pink from the wine, her fingers laced with mine, I convinced myself Martin was wrong. I wanted to believe I was untouchable, that I'd finally escaped the gravitational pull of Danny's chaos. I was wrong. Because after that party, Danny started showing up. A lot. Sometimes he brought extra samples from the local craft brewery. Sometimes he said he was in the area and thought he'd drop by. Once, he came with an old shoebox full of photos and said, I figured Lisa might like to see what you looked like before you were so corporate. I found him once in our garage, staring at my bike like it was a crime.
Nice ride, he said. Lisa told me you guys are thinking about a honeymoon road trip. Sounds intimate.
That word hung in the air like smoke. Lisa, bless her, thought he was trying. He's really opening up to me, she said. It's sweet. He told me about how hard it's been, living in your shadow. He thinks the world of you, Kyle. I wanted to believe her. I really did. She even defended him when I brought up his random drop-ins. He's your brother. Isn't this what you've always wanted? For him to feel like part of your life? Part of my life. He'd been dripping poison into every room I loved, and I was too stupid or too trusting to notice. Then one day, Lisa said something that stopped me cold. He told me, she whispered, that sometimes you make him feel small, like he'll never be enough. He said he envies you. I stared at her. Not because I was surprised Danny played the victim, but because she believed him. That night, I stood by the kitchen sink, watching her water the little bonsai we'd bought together. Our practice tree. We called it training for one day when we'd have a backyard, a dog, maybe even kids. She adjusted a branch and smiled. He said Scarlett looked like me, she murmured. And just like that, everything turned cold. Scarlett. He was using Scarlett again. That name wasn't nostalgia. It was a pattern. He'd done this before with exes, with roommates, even with a colleague's fiancée years ago. Always the same strategy sob story, plus emotional validation equals access. And now, he was rehearsing his playbook on the woman I was about to marry. I should have kicked him out of our lives right then. But instead, I chose trust.
I silenced the alarms in my head. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Lisa would never fall for someone like Danny.
3 weeks later, I opened my front door and walked into a scene I'll never unsee. Her shirt half off, his jeans undone. Our couch, the one we picked out together at West Elm, tilted slightly from where they'd shifted their weight. And the bonsai. It lay on the floor, cracked pot, dirt everywhere. That tree had been fragile. Just like trust.
Just like me.
And right there, standing in the ruins of my future, I knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Because if Danny wanted to live in the shadow of Scarlett well, it was time I brought her into the light. The day after I caught them, I stayed silent. I didn't rage. I didn't burn down the house. I just disappeared. I booked a hotel on the edge of San Jose, the kind where the hallway carpets still smell like chlorine from the indoor pool and the vending machines eat your dollars. I needed somewhere no one would look, not even Martin. For 2 days, I lived off gas station snacks and room service burgers. I stared at the ceiling, numb, waiting for the adrenaline to wear off and the grief to kick in. But it didn't.
I wasn't sad.
I was awake, like someone had been holding a pillow over my face for years, and I'd finally wriggled free. Still, I had loose ends to tie. And one of them was Lisa. She called me 27 times. No voicemails, just missed calls, spaced a few minutes apart, like she didn't know what to say but hoped if she dialed enough, I'd pick up and make it easy. I didn't. Then came the texts. Kyle, please, I need to explain. It wasn't what it looked like. Danny was just in pain. I didn't know how to push him away. That last one made my skin crawl. Because in that sentence, she handed me the truth wrapped in a lie. She had known. She just didn't want to be the one to say no. That's when I realized this wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about love. It was about proximity to pain. Danny had built his whole life around being wounded, and people like Lisa, they mistake wounded for deep, especially when the pain comes with puppy dog eyes and tragic backstories. But I wasn't going to play therapist for either of them. Not anymore. When I finally returned to the house, it was empty. Lisa was gone. Her clothes, her framed photos, her makeup tray in the bathroom all vanished. But she'd left one thing behind. The bonsai. It sat upright on the windowsill, repotted, cleaned, as if nothing had happened. The crack on the ceramic pot had been glued. The soil was still damp. She'd watered it before she left. It was almost worse than if she'd taken it. That little tree had been ours. We'd bought it at a farmer's market in Santa Cruz on a whim. I remembered her holding it with both hands like it was fragile pottery, whispering, "It needs light and stillness, just like us." And now it sat there alone, patched up, pretending it hadn't been dropped. I took it and shoved it in the garage. Let it wilt. The silence in that house stretched for days. I didn't turn on music, didn't cook, just worked, ate cold leftovers, slept on the floor of the guest room because the master bed still smelled like her perfume. And then, of course, Danny called. "Block number," I answered without thinking.
"Hey, bro," he said, like we were talking after a pickup game. "You okay?"
Silence. Then he sighed, all breathy and victim-like. I didn't mean for that to happen. It just happened. You know how Lisa is. She listens. No one listens anymore. I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up, blocked him, and that should have been the end. But then came Martin. He showed up one morning with a bag of groceries and a face full of judgment. "I figured you hadn't eaten anything that didn't come out of a styrofoam box," he said, walking past me like he owned the place. He made eggs, strong coffee, sat me down at my own kitchen table and said, "So when are we going to deal with the snake in the basement?" I stared at him. "Lisa's gone." "Yeah," he nodded, "but Danny's still slithering around out there. And the thing is, I've seen this move before." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a flash drive. I've been keeping notes, voice memos, little things he's said over the years, to women, to friends, even to me. I blinked. Why? Because I know a manipulator when I see one. Martin said flatly, "And your brother, he's textbook. He doesn't seduce, he invades. He doesn't love, he mimics." He leaned back. "And I think it's time someone showed him what it feels like to be watched." I laughed. I couldn't help it.
"You sound like a hitman."
Martin smirked. "Nah, hitmen want money. I just want closure." He slid the flash drive across the table. "Let me ask you something. Kyle, do you remember Scarlett?" My stomach turned. "Yeah," I said slowly. "College girl. Broke Danny's heart. The great trauma of his life." Martin shook his head. "Scarlett didn't break his heart. She ran from him after he crashed her poetry reading and accused her of cheating in front of the whole room. I was there." I stared. "She told me later he faked a suicide attempt to get her back. When she didn't respond, he spread a rumor she had an abortion, ruined her last semester." That hit like a freight train. "But Danny told us." "Danny tells stories," Martin interrupted. "And you've been the main character in his story your whole damn life. Time to write your own." He stood. "I'll find Scarlett. She's out there. And I think she'd be very interested to hear how he used her name to reel in your fiancée." I swallowed hard. "Martin, what are we even doing?" He looked at me with something between pity and fire.
"We're building a mirror, one he won't be able to look away from."
That night, I sat alone in the master bedroom for the first time. I changed the sheets, lit a candle, threw out the last bottle of Lisa's shampoo. Then I took the bonsai out of the garage. Its leaves were drooping, the soil dry. The crack in the pot had started to widen again. I stared at it. Then I whispered, "Let's see if you're worth saving." And I watered it. A single act of care. Not for Lisa, not for the past. For me. Because Danny wasn't going to break anything else I'd built. Not again. But just as I was starting to breathe again, my phone buzzed. Unknown number.
I answered.
A woman's voice, shaky but firm.
Is this Kyle Benson?
Yes. This is Scarlet Rain. Martin said you wanted to speak to me. I froze. I've heard what your brother did to you. She continued, and I think it's time someone else spoke up. The moment I heard Scarlett's voice on the phone, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself in years hope. She was real. Not just a ghost haunting Danny's stories. She was alive and willing to talk. Scarlet Rain was the real deal. She told me everything. How Danny had shadowed her through college, pretending to be her knight when all he was doing was setting traps. How he'd spread lies about her after she finally said no. How she had to move schools just to escape the rumors he started. And then, the worst part, how she'd watched him do the exact same thing all over again, this time with Lisa. Hearing her voice calm, steady, even a little weary, it was like a jigsaw puzzle snapping into place. Danny's patterns, his excuses, his manipulations. Suddenly, it wasn't just me. It was them. Two women caught in the same web of lies. And it was my job to make sure Danny couldn't spin his story any longer. That night, I laid out a plan with Martin. We weren't just going to confront Danny. We were going to make him face himself. We gathered every voice memo, every text message, every secret conversation Martin had recorded over the years. All proof of Danny's emotional manipulation and lies. We would use Scarlett's story as the centerpiece, the proof that Danny's charm was a calculated act.
And the stage was set for the showdown.
A backyard barbecue at our parents' house, the same place where Danny had toasted my luck weeks before. This time, the guests didn't know they were witnesses to a reckoning. As guests arrived, I watched Danny greet them with his usual fake warmth, the practiced smile that always made me sick. Lisa was there too, sitting quietly, eyes down. The bonsai was back on the windowsill in the living room, but now it was different. Next to it sat a small plaque engraved with the words, "Regrowth, not for everyone."
It was subtle, but I knew.
That bonsai was no longer just a plant. It was a symbol of broken trust, shattered dreams, and the hope to rebuild. I let the party unfold for a while, watching and waiting. And then, with a calm I had to fake, I stood up. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I said, voice steady but cold. The chatter died. "I want to share something important with all of you." I plugged my phone into the speaker. And then I pressed play. Scarlett's voice filled the room. Clear. Unflinching. "You asked me to speak up, so here I am." The room grew silent, the only sound the steady beat of her words describing Danny's lies, his threats, his cruelty. Faces paled. My parents exchanged shocked glances. Danny's smug smile vanished. And Lisa looked up, tears brimming, relief and sorrow tangled in her gaze. When the message ended, the tension was suffocating. I met Danny's eyes. "This is the man you trusted," I said softly. "The man who broke two women and almost destroyed me." He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught. I wasn't done. Martin stepped forward. "We've recorded everything," he said. "Every time Danny manipulated Lisa, lied to friends, and twisted the truth." He handed Lisa an envelope. Inside were texts, voice memos, and photos, undeniable proof. Lisa shook but stood. "I never wanted to believe it," she said, voice shaky. "But now I see the truth." Danny's world collapsed in that moment. I watched as the man who'd always worn a mask finally crumbled. He looked around, desperate for an ally, but found only cold, judging eyes. My parents, silent. My friends, stunned. Even Lisa's face was hardening. The bonsai's shadow stretched across the floor, a quiet witness to the storm. Then, in a last desperate move, Danny tried to turn the tables. He raised his voice, accused me of overreacting, of tearing the family apart. But no one listened. Not anymore. That night, Danny left. No cheers, no farewells, just the echo of a life unraveling. And as I stood there, watching the door close behind him, I knew one thing. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every scar left behind. For every bonsai broken and waiting to be replanted. And deep down, I felt a strange calm. Because sometimes, you have to watch everything fall apart before you can build it back stronger. The house felt colder after Danny left that night, even though the heater was blasting. I sat in the living room, the bonsai plant on the windowsill catching the fading sunlight, its leaves trembling slightly in the breeze from the cracked window. The engraved plaque caught my eye. Regrowth, not for everyone. A bitter reminder that healing was possible, but only if you chose it. Martin was right. This was just the beginning. But what exactly was I beginning? Revenge, justice, closure? I couldn't answer. What I did know was I couldn't just sit here waiting for Danny to make his next move. He was a master manipulator, a man who weaponized trauma to control everyone around him, and I had to be smarter. That morning, I woke early and pulled out the flash drive Martin had given me. I plugged it into my laptop and started sorting through files, hundreds of voice memos, text message screenshots, recordings from late-night phone calls. Every whisper of doubt Danny planted in Lisa's mind. Every lie he told to cover up his mistakes. Every time he made himself the victim. It was overwhelming, watching those recordings, hearing Danny's voice dripping with false sincerity. Felt like peeling back layers of a rotten fruit. But it was also necessary. I needed to know the full extent of his deception. The more I listened, the clearer the pattern became. Danny didn't just manipulate Lisa. He had done this before. Scarlett wasn't alone. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. And then there was the legal side. Martin, ever the realist, reminded me that emotional abuse wasn't always easy to prove. But with this mountain of evidence, it could be. We started crafting a strategy. First, I had to confront my parents, the ones who had kept Danny wrapped in cotton wool for years, while I got the cold shoulder. I needed them to see the truth. So I sent a message, a simple invite. Dinner at my place, tomorrow night. We need to talk. When they arrived, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Mom's smile was tight, Dad's eyes sharp. I didn't waste time. I placed a small stack of printed texts and screenshots on the coffee table. This, I said, is what you've been ignoring. Mom gasped. Dad's jaw clenched. They tried to defend Danny at first. He's had a hard time. You don't understand family, but the evidence was too clear. Eventually, their voices faded. I watched the walls they'd built around their golden child crumble. That night felt like a victory. But Martin warned me not to get comfortable. Danny's not just going to take this lying down. And he was right. The next day, Danny reached out to me with a voice message. His tone was calm but icy. You think you've won, Kyle. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. But I was ready. With Martin's help, I traced every lie back to its source. We found old emails Danny had sent to Lisa gaslighting her, blaming her, painting himself as the misunderstood hero. We uncovered messages to friends, trying to pit us against each other. And then, the final piece. An email from Danny to Scarlett, years old, but damning. He admitted to faking crises, to emotional blackmail, to ruining her reputation out of spite. I printed it and held it up like a weapon. This was the proof that would end the cycle. And that's when I made the decision. I would bring all of this to light. Not in private. Not behind closed doors, but in front of everyone who had ever been touched by his lies. The same backyard where Danny toasted me as the lucky brother would become the stage for his unmasking. I imagined the moment. The crowd's murmurs as the recordings played. The stunned silence when the emails were read aloud. Danny's face turning pale. And me, standing firm, reclaiming my life. But even as I planned, there was a shadow lingering. Lisa! She was still hurt, still torn between love and betrayal. I didn't want to lose her. So I reached out. Sent her a text, "I'm going to fix this. For us. For the truth. Stay safe." No reply. I stared at the screen, heart heavy. This fight was bigger than me. And it was far from over. As I packed up the evidence that night, a sharp knock came at the door. I opened it to find Martin wide-eyed, urgent. "Danny's coming home early. He's not waiting for the barbecue." My blood ran cold, because I knew what that meant. The storm wasn't just coming. It was here that evening. The air around the house felt thick, like the calm before a storm that everyone but me could see coming. Danny showed up earlier than anyone expected. No announcements, no warnings. Just his familiar knock at the door, sharp, insistent. I opened it to find him standing there, eyes cold but full of a dangerous calm, like a predator waiting for his prey to blink first. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, carrying the same fake smile that had cost me everything. The backyard barbecue was just hours away, but Danny didn't care about appearances tonight. He was here to fight. I locked the door behind him and turned to face the man who'd shattered my trust and nearly destroyed my life. "Danny," I said, voice steady, "we need to talk." He chuckled. "You and Martin think you've got me cornered, but you don't know me." "I know enough," I replied, stepping closer, "enough to see through your lies, your games, your manipulation." He sneered, and for a moment, I saw the boy I once knew, the brother who had crumbled under his own insecurities and used everyone else to prop himself up. But that boy was gone, replaced by someone dangerous. The bonsai, still sitting quietly on the windowsill, seemed to tremble, its leaves catching the flicker of the porch light like silent witnesses to the showdown. Danny reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I want to hear what you've got on me," he said. "Play it." Martin had loaded the living room speakers with every voice memo, every text, every damning recording. I pressed play. Danny's voice filled the room smooth, rehearsed, dripping with false charm as he twisted the truth. Gaslit Lisa, and played the victim. Lisa's whispered pleas, Scarlett's steady accusations, my own quiet heartbreak. With every word, Danny's smug facade crumbled a little more. His eyes darted to the window, where the bonsai's shadow stretched across the floor. The tree that had been our symbol of growth was now a mirror of decay. When the last recording ended, I stood silent, watching. Danny's breathing was ragged. He looked like a man trapped in his own lies. Lisa stepped forward, holding the envelope of proof. Her voice was trembling but clear. I never wanted to believe it, but I had to face the truth. She handed over screenshots and messages where Danny had gaslighted and controlled her. Danny's voice broke as he stammered excuses, but no one listened. Not my parents, not the friends, not even Lisa. That night, Danny's world unraveled in front of everyone. And as he stormed out, I felt a weight lift. But the fight wasn't over. Because justice isn't always swift. It's messy. It's painful. And sometimes it leaves scars. Over the next few days, the house felt empty. Lisa vanished from social media, disappeared from texts. She sent me a letter short, raw, and full of regret. She had trusted the wrong person. She was sorry. I didn't answer. Instead, I focused on the bonsai. I moved it to the balcony, where the sun could reach it freely. Its leaves were still fragile, but I watered it gently. Because sometimes, healing starts with small, quiet acts. Then came the call from Martin. "We've got more," he said. "Danny's been lying to everyone, friends, family. We've got proof." We prepared to bring everything to light. Because this time, it wasn't just about me. It was about breaking the cycle. Danny's reign of deception was ending. But just as I thought I could finally breathe, a knock came at the door again. Only this time, it wasn't Danny. It was the police. And they were holding a warrant. The knock at the door felt heavier than it should have. When I opened it, 2 uniformed officers stood there, their faces serious but professional. "Mr. Benson," one asked. I nodded. "We're here with a warrant," he said, holding out a document with a seal. My heart sank. For a moment, I thought it was about Danny. But no. They were here to serve me a subpoena in connection with the investigation into Danny's manipulation and harassment. Apparently, the evidence we'd handed over had triggered a formal inquiry. The officers explained that Danny had been reported for emotional abuse and coercion, a serious charge that was beginning to unravel a long-hidden web of deceit. I let them in, answering questions, showing the recordings and documents. It was surreal. Suddenly, the battle I'd been fighting alone became public. And Danny, he was losing more than just my family's trust. The weight of his actions was crashing down, exposing years of lies. In the following weeks, Danny's world collapsed completely. My parents stopped returning his calls. His friends distanced themselves. Even the local startup community, where he'd once tried to build a name, quietly shut their doors. Lisa sent me one last message, fragile and raw. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm working on myself now." I didn't reply, because healing takes time. And forgiveness, that's a journey, not a moment. The bonsai plant, now fully restored and flourishing on my balcony, became my daily reminder that even when everything breaks, there's a chance to grow again. But while I was moving forward, Danny was facing consequences. A restraining order, mandatory counseling, and the loss of nearly everything he'd once relied on. And yet, even in his downfall, he tried to rewrite the story, painting himself as the victim, trying to pit people against each other. But this time, no one bought it. Not Lisa. Not my parents. Not me. The final blow came when Scarlett, my unlikely ally, confronted him publicly. Her voice steady, recounting the truth without hesitation. The house of cards collapsed. And as I sat alone one evening, watching the sun set over the city skyline, I realized something important. This wasn't just my story. It was a story about all of us. About the damage caused when trust is broken. About the courage it takes to stand up and say, "Enough." And about the power of reclaiming your life, no matter how broken it feels. But just as I started to feel peace, my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. And it said one chilling thing. "You think it's over? You're just getting started." The city lights flickered through my apartment window as I sat alone. The bonsai plant softly glowing under the moonlight, a quiet symbol of resilience after all the storms. Months had passed since Danny's unraveling, since the chaos that nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for. And yet, even in this silence, I felt a strange weight pressing on my chest, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and something else, a deep, raw vulnerability. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's a constant battle between who you were, who you are, and who you want to become. I traced my fingers along the bonsai's new leaves. Each one was a small miracle, a promise that growth is possible, even after being broken. I thought about Lisa, about Scarlett, about Martin, the unexpected ally who stood by me when I needed it most. We were all survivors in different ways. And what I learned through this journey was more than just a personal victory. It was a lesson about family, about betrayal, about the fragile lines between love and manipulation. I remembered the nights I spent questioning if I was the problem, wondering if maybe I'd been too hard, too unforgiving. But no. The truth is this sometimes. People hurt you not because you deserve it, but because they are too broken to do better. And sometimes, the greatest act of courage is setting boundaries. It means saying no to those who tear you down, even if they're blood. It means reclaiming your voice when it's been drowned out for too long. It means understanding that revenge isn't about cruelty, it's about justice. About restoring balance to a life that's been unfairly tipped. I thought about the bonsai again, how it had been cracked, battered, almost dead. And yet here it was, alive. A reminder that even when you lose your roots, you can still find a way to grow. But just as I felt ready to close this chapter, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. It read, "The past never really leaves. It waits. Watch your back." My breath caught. Because the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Maybe it never really ends. Maybe it's about how you choose to live after the storm. I looked out at the skyline again, the city humming softly beneath the stars, and I smiled. Because this time, I was ready. Ready to face whatever came next. To protect what I've built. To grow stronger than ever. If you've ever felt betrayed by those you trusted most, know this, you're not alone. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the strongest selves.
Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe.
Share your thoughts, your own battles. Because healing begins when we stop hiding in silence. And remember,
you're stronger than your scars. And your story is still being written. Story 2. My name is Oliver Miller. I'm 29, a firefighter with 6 years under my belt, 2 apartment fires, 1 collapsed ceiling, and more burnt flesh than I care to describe. I've pulled kids out of smoke, held dying hands, and delivered CPR on the cracked tiles of strangers' kitchens. But nothing, and I mean nothing, burned like watching the woman I loved, the woman I funded, walk out of our home to go find herself, with someone else's cologne on her neck. This story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about realizing I was paying for my own betrayal. And the worst part, it wasn't even spontaneous. It was planned, coordinated, scripted like a damn wellness retreat. And her best friend, Charlotte. She was the director, the life coach, and the villain all wrapped in a blazer from Revolve. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you've ever stayed loyal to someone who slowly started auditioning your replacement, if you've ever paid a bill with love only to realize it was financing your own humiliation, stick around. And while you're here, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most disrespectful thing someone's ever done to you while smiling to your face? Because this one's got it all: designer lies, twisted empowerment, a fake break, and a twist that made even me drop the glass I was holding. 4 years married, 6 years together. Penelope and I met at a birthday party for a mutual friend back when I was still training at the fire academy. She had this laugh that cut through the room, not loud, just certain, like someone who'd already decided the world owed her charm, beauty, and a little bit of glitter. And I was hooked. She worked at a boutique downtown, part-time, but it might as well have been a fashion magazine shoot every shift. Her closet looked like a Sephora warehouse had collided with Nordstrom. She had a style I didn't understand, but damn if I didn't love watching her curate it. When we got married, I knew her tastes came with a price tag, but I also knew I could handle it. What I didn't know was that handling it meant budgeting my happiness while she quietly negotiated a better deal elsewhere.
We lived in a small 2-bedroom in San Diego, close enough to my station that I could come home for meals between shifts. I took on extra hours when I could. Bought her things she didn't ask for, but always appreciated a necklace for no reason, a spa package after a rough week. That time she mentioned wanting to try Nobu, I surprised her with a reservation the next day. She used to say things like, "I love that you notice what I don't say." Looking back, that might have been the truest thing she ever told me. Then came her Charlotte. Charlotte was the kind of friend who made you feel like you were being interviewed every time you answered a question. Always just a little too styled, a little too confident, a little too interested in stirring the pot. She flew in from Scottsdale one Friday for what Penelope said was a mental reset weekend. Charlotte had just ended a toxic relationship, and she needed real sisterhood energy. Yeah, that should have been my first red flag. But hey, Penelope seemed excited. So I played the good husband, cleared the guest room, bought the wine, even took them to dinner the first night. Charlotte talked a lot. About vibes, about abundance, about high-value men. She said things like, "If he won't match your energy, leave him where he is," and laughed every time Penelope looked my way. That whole weekend was weird. They whispered, laughed, took selfies like they were launching a joint brand. Penelope, who used to tell me everything, even what she ate for lunch, barely made eye contact. Sunday night, I came home late from a call. Minor kitchen fire. The smell of scorched plastic still clinging to my jacket. I just wanted water. Quiet. A second to breathe. But what I heard from the living room stopped me cold. "Charlotte, he's gotten comfortable. They all do. They think just because they work hard. We owe them loyalty. Girl, you're settling. And for what? A man who buys you a Coach bag instead of Chanel." Penelope didn't argue, didn't laugh. She said, "I just want to feel like I matter again." Charlotte, lowering her voice, "Then make him feel it. Tell him you need space. A break. While he's sweating. You'll figure out if he's still your person or if someone else already is." My mouth went dry. My hands clenched. I stood there, behind the kitchen wall, barely breathing. And then Charlotte delivered the final blow. Smart women always have a backup plan. You're not cheating, babe. You're auditioning. I didn't hear much after that, just the blood in my ears, pounding like a fire alarm. My wife, talking about emotional auditions like I was a half-finished resume. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan. The woman next to me, same perfume, same skin, was already halfway gone, and I couldn't unhear it. Couldn't unknow that my hard-earned money, my love, my faithfulness had become Charlotte's TED Talk case study. But I said nothing. I waited. And the next morning, like clockwork, she dropped it. Over breakfast, while stirring almond milk into her coffee with one hand and scrolling Instagram with the other. "Oliver, I think I need space, just for a week, to clear my head." She didn't look up, didn't flinch, just kept stirring. I didn't ask where she was going. I already knew. Charlotte's studio in Scottsdale had a guest bed and a full-body mirror. A perfect launch pad for a transformational week. So I nodded. "If that's what you need." She blinked, surprised, expected me to beg, cry, fight. She got silence. She packed her bags in the afternoon. When I came home, I found her suitcase by the door, her makeup gone from the bathroom, half the closet missing. She gave me a weak smile. "I'll call you in a few days." I picked up my wallet off the table, old, scuffed leather, torn edge from years of wear, and shoved it into my back pocket. "Sure," I said. But what I was thinking was that when a woman says she's leaving for clarity, she's already found her answer. And I was done funding it. The silence after she left was so thick. It pressed against my skin. You don't realize how much someone's presence, her perfume, her humming in the kitchen, Her little makeup disasters on the counter fills up a space until it's all gone in one sweep.
And let me tell you something I didn't expect. Relief doesn't feel like peace at first. It feels like a bruise you're not done touching yet.
Penelope was gone, but her absence wasn't quiet. Everywhere I turned, in that apartment screamed of her. The gold heels abandoned under the couch. The almost empty bottle of face serum I kept knocking over on the bathroom shelf. The love you, babe sticky note on the fridge dated 2 weeks before the betrayal I overheard.
And yet, I didn't delete anything. Not yet.
Because part of me needed the evidence, not just for court or lawyers or future justifications, but for me. To remind myself this wasn't a bad dream. This was my real, humiliating, credit-funded reality. I sat down that night with a glass of whiskey, that old leather wallet in my back pocket still digging into the chair, symbol of years of grinding, of bending, of carrying more than my share because that's what love means. And I opened my banking app, not because I was suspicious, not yet, but because something inside me, the part of me that watches people lie for a living, at 2 a.m., in burning buildings, was whispering,
"She's already moved on. She's probably using your money to do it."
The credit card was still active. We'd never officially split finances, and she hadn't touched the account until 3 days ago.
That's when the charges started showing up.
$480 at a custom tailor in Scottsdale, $289 for a dinner at Mastro's City Hall Steakhouse, $197 at a skincare lounge, Uber rides, Whole Foods, even a goddamn manifestation retreat journal set from Etsy, all shipped to Charlotte's address. It was like watching my own humiliation detailed line by line, in bold font.
I didn't sleep that night.
Instead, I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by printed statements, receipts, her old texts about needing space, and the familiar weight of knowing I'd been too generous to notice.
I thought about our wedding day.
How she cried during the vows. How she whispered, "You always make me feel safe," and how I believed her. But maybe what she meant was, "You always make me feel taken care of." There's a difference.
Safety is mutual. Comfort, that's one way when you're the one footing the emotional and financial bill.
The next day, I called Wyatt my cousin, family, but also a corporate attorney with a specialty in asset protection and divorce proceedings. The kind of guy who smiles like a banker and speaks like a surgeon.
I didn't tell him everything, just enough.
He whistled low through the phone. "You're gonna need to freeze joint assets. Today. Because if she's spending like that before the split, she's gonna empty you out once it gets official." Then he said the one line that shook me. "You're not going through a separation. You're in a hostile asset extraction wrapped in lipstick and hashtags." I hung up, hands cold. I wasn't just a husband left behind. I was a sponsor being milked. I pulled out my old Fire Academy duffel bag, shoved a few things in documents, receipts, the engagement ring box, not for drama, just for reality. Then I reached for my wallet again, stitched leather. Busted corner. The one I'd carried since I was 19. It was fraying. So was I. Without thinking, I tossed it in the trash can under the sink, not like a dramatic symbol, but like a snake shedding dead skin. Because this version of Oliver, the one who kept giving more and expecting love back, was done. I needed a clean cut. 2 days after she left, Penelope finally called. Her name lit up on my screen like a ghost with perfect eyebrows. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hey," she said, voice soft. "Just checking in." I didn't say anything.
"Are you okay?"
I waited.
I mean, I don't want things to be weird. This is hard on both of us. I'm trying to figure myself out, you know?
Then, without missing a beat. "Also, my card didn't go through at the spa today. I think the bank glitched." That's when I knew she didn't suspect a thing. Because Penelope still thought I was the same guy. the one who wouldn't dare pull the plug, the one who believed love meant never letting go. But that guy, he got left behind with the broken wallet.
Yeah, I said slowly. Might want to call the bank. Could be fraud. She hummed. Okay, well, maybe I'll use Charlotte's for now. Anyway, we'll talk soon.
I smiled. Sure, we will. And that night, I took the first real breath I'd had in months. Because now, it wasn't just emotional anymore. It was tactical. This wasn't a breakup. It was a game of precision. A legal chessboard where she thought she was queen. But she forgot. I fight fires for a living. I don't flinch at smoke. And if she wanted to play with flames, she was about to learn I don't burn easy, days after Penelope left. The apartment felt like a museum filled with exhibits of a life I thought we were building together. Her half-empty perfume bottle stared at me from the dresser, like a silent witness. My hands trembled as I wrapped the worn leather wallet tighter in my fist, feeling the frayed edges bite into my palm. It was a reminder not just of the years I'd poured into this marriage, but of how easily that effort was unraveling. I kept replaying that night I overheard Charlotte and Penelope plotting in the living room. Their voices weren't hushed. They believed I was asleep upstairs. Charlotte's words cut deeper than any flames I'd battled on duty.
Smart women always have a backup plan.
That phrase haunted me. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a war declaration disguised in empowering rhetoric. I realized then how blind I'd been, how my devotion was mistaken for weakness. My mind raced. How do you fight someone who weaponizes love against you? The injustice burned hotter than any fire I'd faced. I'd been working overtime, swallowing exhaustion to give Penelope everything she wanted: designer bags, dinners at Nobu, spontaneous weekend getaways. And in return, I was a placeholder, a paycheck, a safety net. Yet, the media tells us this is the American dream: work hard, provide, and you'll be rewarded with a loving family. But what happens when the dream is a lie? When hard work funds someone else's escape? That question clawed at me every waking moment. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the sun casting harsh lines through the blinds. I pulled out the joint credit card statement and scrutinized every charge, each swipe a betrayal stitched into our shared life. There it was: payments to upscale hotels in Scottsdale, tailored suits I'd never seen, dinners with names I didn't recognize, all billed to my card. And the delivery address is Charlotte's apartment. A knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't a simple emotional break. This was financial exploitation. I remembered the old leather wallet again, the symbol of my years of struggle. Its torn edges reflected my fraying hope. That day, I called Wyatt, my cousin and a sharp divorce lawyer. His voice was calm but firm. You're not just dealing with a breakup. This is a calculated extraction of assets. Freeze your accounts immediately. His words hit me like a fire hose. Freeze accounts, legal moves. Divorce lawyer, I'd never imagined this day. But the reality was clear. I needed to act fast before my hard-earned money disappeared into Charlotte's empowerment empire. I began to block access to joint accounts, reroute my direct deposit, and gather evidence: screenshots, emails, receipts, all carefully compiled into a digital dossier. But while I was playing legal chess, Penelope was living in Charlotte's studio, redecorating her me-time sanctuary with scented candles and self-help books, blissfully unaware or willfully ignorant that her financial strings were snapping. One evening, I sat alone, surrounded by paperwork. The weight was crushing, but there was a clarity that hadn't been there before. My old wallet lay shredded beside me, a symbol of the man I was letting go. I knew this fight wasn't just about money or betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, rewriting the narrative that men like me are just wallets to be drained. That same week, Penelope called. Her voice was fragile, hesitant. Oliver, the bank called. They said my card was declined. I paused. The power had shifted. Might want to check your statements, I replied evenly.
She faltered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swallowed the urge to say more.
Because this wasn't about forgiveness, it was about justice. And then Charlotte's voice came through the venom masked in false concern. You're being controlling, toxic. This legal freeze is just fear.
But I knew better.
This was no longer about a woman needing space. It was about a man who finally said, enough. I looked around the empty apartment, my heartbeat steady, my resolve steel. The next move would change everything.
Because Penelope and Charlotte were about to discover,
you don't mess with a firefighter's fire. After the phone call with Wyatt, I felt a spark, a flicker of control returning to my hands. For months, I'd been swallowed by confusion and heartbreak. But now I had a plan. It wasn't just about reacting anymore. It was about taking charge.
I pulled out the stack of papers I'd started compiling, the credit card statements, receipts, and screenshots of Penelope's messages. Each page was a testament to her double life, funded by my hard work. As I sorted through them, my fingers brushed against the torn leather wallet I'd tossed in the trash days ago. It sat there, ragged and forgotten, a silent symbol of all I'd sacrificed. But today, it was a reminder to fight. Wyatt had been clear: freeze the accounts, protect what was mine. So I logged into our joint bank account online, my pulse quickening with every click. There it was, the balance I'd earned, slowly being chipped away. I made the call to the bank. The agent was polite but firm, as I requested a freeze on all joint accounts and cards. They needed legal documentation, which Wyatt was preparing. But the freeze could happen immediately. I felt the weight lift just a little. Next, I contacted HR at the fire station to change my direct deposit to a new private account. It wasn't just about money. It was about rebuilding my boundaries. I needed to protect myself from the woman I once called my wife. The thought of confronting Penelope filled me with a strange mix of anger and sadness. But before I could face her, I had to gather solid proof. Wyatt advised me to document everything: call logs, texts, receipts, and even the lease for Charlotte's Scottsdale apartment. I dug deeper. One thing stood out: Charlotte's black Escalade. I remembered Penelope mentioning a getaway. I pulled up lease records online and discovered Charlotte was leasing the car under a business name one Penelope had co-signed years ago during a difficult financial period. The implications hit me like a ton of bricks. If Charlotte racked up expenses on that car, Penelope was liable. The tangled web of finances was deeper than I imagined. I printed every document and organized them into folders labeled evidence. I was no longer a victim. I was an investigator building a case. That night, the apartment felt different. The scent of Penelope's favorite vanilla candle was gone. Instead, there was the crisp scent of fresh paper and determination. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of bourbon, my hands steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I thought about the life we'd shared, the nights I came home exhausted but still managed to smile, the mornings we argued over bills, the promises we made. The contrast between those memories and the cold reality was like a fire raging in my chest. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was Penelope. Oliver, can we talk? I'm sorry for everything.
I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to respond, but another part, the part Wyatt was building, urged patience. I typed back slowly. We need to talk, but not like this. Give me time. The next morning, I received a package. Inside was a neatly wrapped box, Penelope's favorite scent from Sephora, untouched. Attached was a note. I miss us. I'm scared. Can we find a way back? I felt the familiar ache of hope and betrayal twisting inside me. Was this an olive branch or another performance? Before I could decide, my phone rang again. It was Charlotte.
Her voice was icy, controlled. "You're playing a dangerous game. Oliver, you think freezing accounts will stop us? This is about more than money. It's about power." I let her words hang in the air.
Power. That's what she craved. But I was done letting her dictate the terms. Over the next few days, I watched as Penelope's world shifted. Her charges were declined. Calls from the bank became frequent. Charlotte's Instagram feed shifted from empowerment posts to defensive rants and vague threats. One evening, Penelope came to the apartment. Her eyes were red-rimmed, voice trembling.
"I feel lost. Oliver, I never meant to hurt you."
I looked at her, really looked. The confident woman who once laughed with Charlotte now looked like a frightened girl. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old leather wallet worn. Torn, but still real.
"This was me, the man who believed in us."
I paused, letting the weight of that sink in.
"You chose to discard him."
Penelope's shoulders shook with silent sobs.
I whispered.
But I'm not done. And just when I thought the storm was about to break, a new message popped up on my phone. From an unknown number, it read,
"You think this is the end? You haven't seen anything yet."
The game had changed, and so had I. The moment I flipped the switch on those joint accounts, the game changed, and not quietly, within hours. The air around Penelope and Charlotte thickened like smoke before a fire. I could almost hear the gears turning in Charlotte's mind as she frantically typed up posts, half spiritual manifesto, half veiled threats broadcasting her victimhood to the world. Toxic masculinity in action. One post screamed, trying to control my truth with money and fear. But she missed one thing. I wasn't here to control her. I was here to expose her. Penelope's first reaction was confusion, quickly replaced by panic. I still remember the text she sent me early the next morning.
"Oliver, my card was declined at Sephora. This has to be a mistake."
Her words sounded innocent, but I knew better. She didn't accidentally spend thousands at a high-end tailor or dine lavishly at Mastro's without knowing the financial consequences. I waited before replying, savoring the power of silence. Finally, I typed,
"Check your statements."
Her reply was quick but shaky. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry." That apology was her first crack, the first sign that the illusion was slipping. Charlotte, however, went on the offensive.
She called me late one night, voice sharp and full of venom.
"You think freezing accounts will stop us? You're playing with fire, Oliver, but you don't realize who you're messing with." Her tone was smug, as if she was still the one holding the cards. But I was ready. I had Wyatt preparing the legal papers motions to freeze assets, subpoenas for financial records, and documentation requests. Each step was calculated, precise. Because, unlike Charlotte, I wasn't just reacting emotionally, I was planning my every move.
Then Penelope showed up at my apartment.
Her hair was messy, eyes swollen from crying. She stood in the doorway, hesitant.
"I'm lost. Oliver, I didn't want any of this to happen."
Her voice broke. In that moment, I saw not just the woman I loved, but the consequences of the toxic influence she'd let in. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the tattered leather wallet, the same one I discarded days ago. "This was the man who believed in us," I said softly. "You chose to throw him away." Her shoulders sagged, tears streaming silently. I didn't yell, didn't beg.
"Instead," I said,
"But I'm not done fighting." That's when the real twist began. A message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You haven't seen anything yet." A chill ran down my spine. This was more than just a breakup. It was a battle. And I was just getting started. Charlotte's message hit me like a slap in the face, cold, sharp, and impossible to ignore. "You think this is over? You haven't seen anything yet." Her words echoed through the quiet of my apartment like the sirens I'm used to hearing warnings of danger ahead. I leaned back in my chair, the old leather wallet still lying on the table, its torn edges like a scar reminding me of how far I'd come and how much was at stake. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, control, the story we tell ourselves about who deserves what in this messy dance called family and love. Penelope was crumbling. Her visits became less frequent, her apologies more desperate. One afternoon, she showed up unexpectedly, clutching a small bag of belongings, eyes red-rimmed. "Oliver, I never wanted to hurt you. Charlotte, she's not who I thought she was." I watched her struggle to keep her voice steady, her hands trembling as she set the bag down. Her confession was a crack in the facade, the truth slipping through the carefully built mask of empowerment Charlotte had sold her. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Because forgiveness without justice would only mean erasing my own worth. My life started to shift. I found solace in small victories, freezing accounts, filing legal motions, and reclaiming control over the finances Charlotte tried to weaponize. Wyatt's firm was relentless. Every document we unearthed was a brick in the wall I was building around myself, a barrier against the storm of betrayal. I thought of the old leather wallet, worn and torn, but still there, a symbol not of defeat but survival. That worn leather was now a talisman. But the fight wasn't just legal. It was personal. Charlotte's social media rants escalated. She painted me as the villain, the controlling ex, the toxic man who refused to let go. Her followers rallied, some reaching out to empower Penelope further. But Penelope was fading under the pressure. One night, she called me in tears. "I don't know who I am anymore. Oliver, I'm lost." Her vulnerability broke something inside me, but I stayed firm. "You lost yourself because you let someone else write your story. It's time to find your own voice." The most painful part, realizing the person I loved had been tangled in a web far beyond my reach. Yet, in the ashes of that destruction, I found a spark of fierce determination to rebuild. Not just my life, but my dignity. And then, just when I thought the dust was settling, a new message lit up my phone. An unknown number. Simple. Cold. Ready to lose everything. The war was far from over. And so was my story. 6 months have passed since the dust started to settle. I moved into a smaller place, a quiet apartment not far from the fire station. The silence here feels different, softer. But it's mine. I painted the walls a deep charcoal gray, the color grounding me like a shield. My worn leather wallet, patched up now, rests on the kitchen counter, a reminder of the battles I fought and the scars I carry. I adopted a pit bull named Whiskey. He's a big, goofy companion with a crooked tail and eyes that somehow understand pain without words. Every evening, I take him up to the rooftop where I watch the San Diego skyline bleed into sunset hues. That moment, the city, the quiet, Whiskey's steady breathing beside me, that's my peace. Penelope tried reaching out a couple of times. Texts left on read, voicemails I never returned. Maybe she's rebuilding. Maybe she's still lost in the maze Charlotte led her into. Charlotte. Last I checked, she's shilling chakra oils on TikTok to an audience of barely 300 people. Her empowerment empire crumbling like a house of cards. Her last post: "Beware of men who mirror your power, then fear it." Cute. Looking back, I realized something vital: empowerment that demands betrayal isn't empowerment at all. It's manipulation wrapped in a designer scarf. Love that asks for silence, secrets, and lies isn't love. It's control and self-worth tethered to someone else's paycheck. That's not confidence. It's dependence dressed up in Gucci. I thought about all the nights I stayed up, worried I wasn't enough, about the overtime shifts, The missed dinners, the quiet sacrifices. It wasn't about the money. It was about respect, something I gave, but never truly received. So, if you're watching this, wondering if you're asking too much, or if your love is unbalanced, ask yourself this instead. Are you asking the right person? This story isn't just mine. It's about anyone who's been a wallet, a fallback, or the fool who stayed too long.
Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop rescuing those who keep setting fires.
If you've ever been burned by someone you trusted, leave A in the comments. Tell me your story, because we deserve to be heard, to heal, to rise. Hit that like button if you believe real love means respect and partnership, and subscribe for more stories that cut deep and heal deeper. The old leather wallet sits on my counter, frayed but still intact. It's a symbol not of what I lost, but what I gained: strength, clarity, and the courage to rewrite my story. And trust me, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning.
Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay true,
and never settle for less than you deserve.